On 20th July 1969, NASA's control room received a message saying the Eagle has landed.
Tranquility Base Here, the Eagle has landed.
The message was received from astronaut Neil Armstrong, who was the commander of Apollo 11. The mission was planned by the United States to become first country to ever reach Moon, and Neil Armstrong became the first human to ever set foot on the Moon. Most of us are unaware of the reasons, failures, complications, and sacrifices behind the success of Apollo 11. It has been criticized by many as they claim that no man landed on the Moon in the mission of Apollo 11, and it was just planned in response of ongoing war. So did Neil Armstrong really put step on the Moon, or US lied to everyone and the footage of Apollo 11 was just filmed on Earth? Welcome to Real Tricks, and let's try to understand the facts about mankind's first step on the Moon.
3, 2, 1, 0, all engine running.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Houston, we see you on a steerable, over. Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
During the Cold War, both countries, America and Soviet Union, were engaged in space race to beat one another. In 1957, the Soviet Union became the first country to launch the first satellite. They named it Sputnik, and it became first man-made object to be launched in Earth's orbit. In response, America launched their satellite in 1958. After 3 years, in 1961, Soviet Union got the lead again, as Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became first person to go to space. America got shocked and frustrated. On 20th April 1961, President of America John F. Kennedy wrote a letter to Vice President urging to take steps toward this space race. He asked the Vice President how they could beat the Soviet Union. He also asked if there is any possibility to achieve dramatic results in the space program, which would help in leading the race.
Before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
The speech was surprising for many as there was no internet, microchips, or GPS technology invented at that time. Even the computers were slow and at the early stage of development. Government of United States and President Kennedy supported the space program by investing $7 to $9 billion in it, and after a few months, NASA started the test. In initial phase, rockets were designed and tested along with command modules. Then the head shield were tested, as these shields were necessary to protect the command module. In the last phase, service module and its propulsion system was made and tested. From 1963 to 1967, NASA spent 5 years in testing the unmanned rockets, and after a successful test, first manned test was planned to launch in February 1967. It was named as Apollo 1. But it didn't go as planned. On 27th January 1967, during the test on the Earth, the cabin caught fire, and the 3 astronauts preparing to go to space died in the fire. NASA continued its efforts, and next missions of Apollo 4, Apollo 5, and Apollo 6 were all unmanned missions for further testing. In October 1968, Apollo 7 mission was launched, and once again they attempted to send humans to the space, which was successful. Only 2 months later, in December 1968, Apollo 8 mission was launched, in which 3 astronauts were sent near the Moon. In March 1969, NASA launched Apollo 9. In this mission, lunar module was tested, which was going to land on the Moon. On its success, Apollo 10 mission was launched, in which 3 astronauts followed all the steps of Apollo 11 mission, except actually landing on the Moon. It is interesting to note that NASA took only 5 years to develop necessary equipment and machinery, and almost 2 years to perform the tests and practices of actual mission. Most of the people only know about 2 astronauts, but in actual, Apollo 11 was planned with 3 astronauts. The mission was led by Commander Neil Armstrong, pilot of the command module, Michael Collins, and the pilot of lunar module, Edwin Buzz Aldrin. Apollo 11 spacecraft was designed in 3 parts. Saturn V5 rocket was used to launch the mission to the space. The command module and service module, also known as CSM and nicknamed as the Columbia, and the third part was lunar module, which nicknamed as the Eagle, and reattached to the CSM on return. The mission was fueled with 1 million gallons of kerosene, liquid oxygen, and liquid hydrogen, and total weight of the rocket, including fuel, was 3 million kg. Within 10 minutes of the launch, Apollo 11 reached Earth's orbit, where it made 1.5 revolutions around the Earth. It took almost 5 hours, after which it began translunar injection, that is to move from Earth's orbit towards Moon's orbit. After a few days, on 19th July 1969, the spacecraft reached Moon's orbit after traveling 400,000 kilometers. During this time, the astronauts just waited, ate, slept, and took pictures of themselves and their surrounding. Michael Collins separated the CSM from lunar module as it had to stay in the Moon's orbit till the return of lunar module. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were in lunar module, who continued their mission towards the Moon as per the schedule to land at around 8 p.m. But at 8 past 10 p.m., the alarm went off. Both astronauts were totally unaware of the reason of the alarm, and they continued their mission after instructions from the control room. Alarm 1202 was indicating alarm showing that the processing system of guidance computer of Apollo 11 was overloaded, but NASA designed the system in a way that it continued to run essential programs. The computer of lunar module was also programmed with automatic landing, but at the height of around 150 meters, Neil Armstrong noticed that the landing site is not suitable as it has huge stones. So he took over manual control of the module and decided to land it 4 miles away from the landing site. Due to this, lunar module consumed extra fuel, and when only 5% fuel left, Neil Armstrong sent a radio message to the Earth.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
This moment was watched by 650 million people on television. Buzz Aldrin followed him on the Moon's surface and for the next 2.5 hours took photographs and collected samples of the Moon's dust and rocks weighing around 23 kgs. They set up several scientific instruments on the Moon and left behind an American flag and a plate with the inscription. On landing, when Neil Armstrong tried to open the door, it wasn't easy due to high pressure. He struggled and opened the door, but during this, he hit the top, and a piece of lunar module broke off. Initially, no one noticed as Moon do not have air and the sound don't travel. The broken piece was the ascent engine arming switch, which is essential to take off from Moon. When astronauts came back in the Eagle and tried to turn on the engine, they realized about the broken engine arming switch. They informed the mission control about this damage and looked for a solution to resolve the situation. The switch basically works to complete an electrical circuit. Buzz Aldrin realized that if the circuit is broken, they tried to complete the circuit again. Interestingly, they used a ballpoint to complete the circuit, and after 21 hours of stay on Moon, they managed to start the engine and took off to reattach to the CSM. The plan for landing on Earth was that the command module and the service module would be separated, and the command module would land on Earth while the service module would then be destroyed due to Earth's atmosphere. But there was a danger that if the debris of the service module floating all around may hit the command module and may result in killing the astronauts on board. For that, NASA installed thrusters in the service module, which would take it far from the command module so that they don't collide with each other. But at the time of separation, they realized that the thrusters on the service module are not working. The US President Nixon had already prepared an alternate speech if anything bad happened. Luckily, the debris didn't hit the command module and the astronauts entered in Earth's atmosphere where the parachutes were deployed, and it landed in the ocean. The astronauts were then evacuated by the rescue ships from the ocean and were quarantined for 2 weeks as per the standard safety procedure. But did America's scripted moon landing mission? Some people say that the moon landing mission was failed, so they planned this fake mission as backup. One of the main reasons of calling this mission fake is the flag. As moon do not have air, so why the flag planted on the moon was fluttering. The flag that Armstrong and Aldrin had taken to the moon was specially designed for this mission. Normal flag has one long vertical rod, but there was a horizontal rod in this too, right at the top of the flag, so that the flag would always be extended out. Because everyone working at NASA knew that if a flag is planted on the moon, it would not flutter due to the lack of wind. So they decided to add a horizontal rod at the top, so the flag would always be properly visible. Due to some problem in extending this horizontal rod, ripple can be seen, which makes people think that the flag is fluttering. Another reason is the photos taken by Armstrong and Aldrin. In these photos, stars aren't visible. The answer to this is very simple. The moon landing took place in the day, at the time when sunlight was hitting the moon, and the white spacesuits that worn by the astronauts were reflective too. The cameras back then didn't have such resolution to see beyond the reflections. Another objection on the photos and videos is about the inconsistency of the angles of the shadows. People argue that since this was like a Hollywood film, they didn't have just a single source of light. That's why the shadows are going all over the place. But in reality, the sun was not only the source of light. The surface of the moon also acts as a reflective source, adding complementary light, which caused the light scattered in all directions. Another question is raised about the photos of Neil Armstrong descending from the lunar module. Again, a very simple explanation that the cameras were installed on the lunar module. Many people criticize that the money being spent to go on the moon could have been used to build at least 120 Harvard-sized universities, but it is important to understand that Apollo 11 mission helped mankind to achieve advancement in computer chips. In 1962, it had been 3 years since microchips were invented, and IBM had decided that in the early 60s, they would not use these microchips in their computers. But since NASA put in so many orders to buy integrated circuits, IBM started working on it, and because of the heavy demand, its price fell by more than 90% over the next 5 years. And so, NASA tested whether we can rely on computers for the safety of human lives. The technology grew exponentially after this moon landing. Then NASA sent more missions to the moon till December 1972. The last mission, Apollo 17, took place. More than 400,000 engineers, scientists, and technicians were part of Apollo program, and it cost more than $24 billion back then, which nowadays is equal to almost $100 billion. In December 2017, former President Donald Trump said that he would increase the funding so that humans could be sent back to the moon by 2024.
It marks an important step in returning American astronauts to the moon.
Now NASA has launched a program called Artemis, which will take first woman to the moon and then send first person of color to the moon as well. First mission is planned in year 2025. The success of Apollo 11 was a significant achievement for United States in the Cold War space race with Soviet Union. The mission inspired a generation of scientists, engineers, explorers, and showed that human spaceflight was possible. It also led to the advances in technology and helped pave the way for further exploration of solar system. If you like the video, press like button, comment and subscribe our channel for more videos coming soon. Thank you.